So let me get started with just a few ideas and terms that are really the foundation of the class. The first thing is, what is art? And I know a lot of you, your first thought is anything can be art. Um, and on some level, that can be true, but art is not art until there is intention behind the art. And there must be intention behind the art that it was created by an artist. So, who's an artist? An artist is anyone that says they're an artist. You can't argue with them. There's no degree, there's no certification. I mean, you can pay someone to take art classes, but if you say you're an artist, you're an artist. And then if you create something as an artist with the intention for it to be art, then it's art. That's it. That's a simple definition. That's all you need to know. So to test it, I would say, is this art? And you're going to say, well, Scott, did an artist create it with the intention for it to be art? I say, no, this is a yellow highlighter. It's a marker. So it was designed. It has some graphics on it, but it was designed to be a marker to write on things. Now, the thing about it is if I placed it right here and I aligned it just right so that it had some meaning to me and I intentionally created it there, then now it becomes art because I'm an artist and I placed it there and it's now art. Is it any good? Maybe not. Is it original? Is it unique? Would you pay me any money for it? Probably not. But that's not the question. It's what is art? And then the other questions that follow are simply qualifications of what type of art is it worth us thinking about. And that leads me to the next thing. So what is classic art? For our purpose, I'll reference classic art because you might be an excellent artist, your mom might be a good artist, but that's not the art we want to look at. We want to look at classic art, which means that it's art that is worthy of your attention, that there's value in you learning about. And what makes it classic is that it's been vetted. Academics have looked at it, have studied the body of work, and they've said this is something that you should pay attention to. Honestly, it's the primary reason we require you get a textbook, because you can be assured that everything in the textbook, any of the artists or any of the art in the textbook, scholars have looked at it. They've studied it. They've said this is something that's unique and original, and you should know about it. And that's what we call classic art. One of the ways you'll know that it's not classic art is if you have a hard time finding stuff about it, because the art critics, the experts, the people, if they haven't studied, haven't written about it, then more than likely it's not classic art for our purposes. Doesn't mean it's not good art, doesn't mean you wouldn't pay a lot of money for it or that a lot of money has been paid for it. It just means that it hasn't been vetted as something worthy of us teaching in an art appreciation class. Art serves a couple purposes. Now, I've asked you to talk about what's the value of art to society, and this goes as part of it. Art represents life. It takes life and reflects it back to us. It shows us things that we can't see, maybe we don't want to see, or it just gives us interpretations of things that we see every day. But art serves a purpose of creating abstractions and making them visible for us. So I often talk about the illusion of art. If you think of a painting and it looks like there's a woman standing in a field, there's not a woman standing in a field. I can tell you, if it's a painting, there's not a woman standing in a field. It's paint on a canvas that's been framed and maybe has some glass in front of it. But you see it and you see this scene and you think of a woman standing in the field. And that's the illusion of art. Artists use elements to create this illusion. And I'm going to have you take a look at a few videos. I'll put up the links for this. But one of the best examples I have for talking about the illusion of art is an OK video. I don't know the name of it offhand, but it's where they use a car to create the sounds of a song that they sing. And I'll have you look at it and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So I'll put that link up and ask you to take a look at it and maybe even comment on it. The other thing that art does is it creates ideas and thoughts that otherwise wouldn't be there. So for instance, I created this work of art, right? And I put it right there. Think of this screen as your room, as a room. When this wasn't here, you weren't thinking about this. You didn't see it. Matter of fact, you might have even thought about the room. You might be looking behind me and things that are filling yours that you can see. But as what art does is it enters a space and it affects your thinking. It makes you have thoughts that you didn't have before. And some artists will want to control your thoughts and give you ideas of what to think about. They might want to influence you, inspire you, motivate you, drive you, or they just might want to be aesthetically pleasing. But art will always affect a space and always affect your thinking. When this is gone, you're not thinking about, hey, what's that stupid yellow marker doing on my screen? Once I place it there, now you're thinking about it. And if I had some type of intention or wanted to affect the way that you saw the world, maybe I would use a yellow marker and put it in the corner of my video. So that's kind of an idea of what art can do. And then so is what I want you to do is expand that out. What's the value of that? Art does things like, what does love look like? What does passion look like? Hate, anger, frustration. If you look at the Mona Lisa by Da Vinci, you think, what is she thinking? The fact that the artist could create this image of this woman, that she has this look, just this little smirk on her face, and you're like, I recognize that. What's she thinking? That's the illusion of art, and that's what art can do. There is another video where, once again, I'll put up a link for you, and it is an IKEA lamp commercial. And it's really a nice job to illustrate the power of art and the effect of art and how it can influence the way that we think. The last thing that I would like to actually introduce to you in this particular video is art periods. And what's the point of art periods? So the way that we teach art appreciation is by introducing different art periods to you. And if you think of a timeline, you go back to the beginning of time, to present day, or at some point. For my courses, I always start at the Renaissance. We could easily go back to the Roman, Greek times, cave paintings, much earlier, thousands of years earlier. But I start at the Renaissance and then come forward to present day. And so then we divide up this timeline into years of how long that art period lasts. So, and art periods last different lengths of time. So, for instance, the Renaissance lasted 200 years, where the Dada art movement lasted 7 years. So, what would cause an art period to last 200 years or last 7 years? And the answer to that question is what makes up an art period. Art periods, just like art, reflects the zeitgeist of the time. It reflects the thinking, the emotion, the tone of society, of people, of a community. Zeitgeist is a great word where, so if we were all sitting in a classroom, or even everyone just sitting in front of this video, you could kind of talk about how people think, what they're thinking about, how they're feeling at that time. If we were sitting in a classroom and the temperature was really low and I was really monotone and boring, which of course I'm not, right? I'd like to think I'm not, kind of, a little bit. But you'd be thinking, someone could say, the zeitgeist of this room is people are bored and they're freezing and they think this guy is ridiculous and they don't want to listen to anyone. They'd rather be anyplace else and they're hungry if it's a certain time of the day or whatever. So zeitgeist reflects the tone and the pitch and the feeling of a group, a community, a society. Art periods can reflect technologies of the time. It can reflect events. It can affect the general overall temperature of a society. Let's say if the society's at war, then people are going to be anxious and nervous and uncomfortable and maybe even pain. And so art periods reflect whatever's going on. The events actually is the reason that the Renaissance is so different from Dada. The Renaissance is reflecting new ideas, new thinking at the time, where Dada is actually in reaction to an event. It's in reaction to World War I. And so between World War I and World War II is when Dada occurred, and it was to react to the craziness that was going on in the world from World War I. So they could do this. They did this in 7 years until World War II started. In the Renaissance, it was about these new ideas and changing. And that's really the biggest thing that I want you to hear about the art timeline and art periods, is that the timeline is not about the art. The timeline is not about the art. It's about ideas. And the art is a visualization, is a representation of those ideas. And so at each time that a new art period starts, it's a new way of thinking for society, for a people, for a community. If we're studying, it's probably more about the world in a region, a larger region, not just a group of people. The group of people might make up the larger movement of the art period. But with each new art period, there's this epoch, there's this noted space where a new kind of thinking starts. And when there's new thinking, sometimes it's not easily accepted. Sometimes it's not seen at all. As a matter of fact, it's discounted. And that's one of the beauties of art, is that you're not always going to recognize the art or appreciate it, because sometimes it's representing a new idea that you can't really see or you can't appreciate or have a complete understanding of, because it doesn't fit into your current mental model. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. It doesn't mean the artists aren't pushing it out there and pushing the bounds and trying to show a new way of seeing the world. There's another video which I'll have you guys watch, which I really enjoy. It's by two cellos, and once again I'll put a link up. And it talks about, it represents what it looks like when a new idea is put in front of people. And in this particular case, well, I'll tell you more about it. I'll try to do an introduction for that. But just be looking for that link so you can actually see what it really looks like for new thinking to occur. The last thing I'll say, I think I probably said it, but the last thing I'll say is there's types of art. And so there's fine art, there's craft, there's pop art, there's design. And these distinctions are a way, when you're looking at it and trying to understand it, you want to know what it is. Fine art is art where there's no purpose to it. It's simply an expression by an artist that says it's an artist. So where you say, hey, Trent, your marker sucks, I would never pay any money for it, I don't get it, it's just stupid, that's okay. Because I'm not doing it to try to make money. I'm not trying to do it to solve a problem. I didn't create it to draw on a board or highlight a book. It's just art. It's just there. And I might have other reasons for it, but it has no pressure to sell, to make money, to mean anything. It's fine art that's certainly, and it's simply an expression of an artist. That's fine art. But if I created this to solve a problem or to mark on a book, or because someone wanted me to create something to help them with something else, then that would be design. Now there's the term craft, which means if the art has a practical application, then that's a craft. So for instance, quilts, stained glass, pottery, a vase. These are things, the vase is to hold flowers. So it might be art, it's beautiful, but the distinction is craft because it has a purpose. A quilt, you might create this beautiful quilt with the sole intention of hanging it on the wall. But the fact that it's quilted, it can be used on your bed to cover you up, that makes it a craft. Pop art that is created to appeal to the masses, that you want it to be accessible. Where fine art is something that's created where you don't care if people get it. I always use the example of Billy Joel. He's a singer in my time, and he was quite popular in pop music. And now, today, Billy Joel makes music that he says he can't even play. What's the point? Well, because he's creating art and exploring things, and the point isn't to make money and to sell it. It's to explore this expression and see where he can go with it. I won't have you watch this, but John Cage is an experimental musician where he has a piece called 321, where he just sits on stage for 3 minutes and 21 seconds, not playing anything, because he wants to listen to the ambiance in the audio, in the hall, whatever venue where he is, and that becomes the music. So he's exploring what is music and what's it sound like, because he's saying a lot of times the musician play over the music, right? So what does it sound when they're quiet, and then what's the room sound like? It's not going to sell many albums of that, but it's an exploration, and people will go and experience that. There's installation art, where the audience is invited into the art and they actually experience it. Performance art, where you're watching something played out. But pop art is, like I said, that's where it's gauged by mass. If it connects, the most people connects with. So the great thing about it is a fine artist, when you hear the idea of the starving artist, that's what you're talking about. When you hear someone like Beyonce or whatever is your favorite artist that you listen to all the time that's a billionaire because of their music, Ed Sheeran, that's because they've created art that appeals to the masses, and that's pop art. Because if they didn't sell many songs or records, it would probably be a sign that they weren't really appealing, and they might not be as good as a Taylor Swift or Justin Bieber or someone like that. So those are the different types of art. I'm sure I'll come back to these a little bit, but just so you have a foundation, one of the assignments we'll do, I think, next week is we'll look at visual elements of making art. But look for a post where I'll put some of these links up, and I might get you to comment on these videos after you watch them, but they'll complement what I said with this. So I've gone a little too long with this. I apologize. I'm looking forward to this term with you guys. It's going to go quickly, so hang in there, do the work, and I look forward to seeing your stuff. So I will talk to you soon.